Good evening. It is Monday, September 24th, 2018. I call the Speedway Town Council meeting to order. My name is Jeff Matthews, President of the Speedway Town Council. Joining me this evening are Councilors Eileen Fisher.
Good evening.
Councilor Jason Delisle.
Good evening.
Vice President David Lindsay.
Good evening.
Councilor Gary Rakes.
Good evening.
Our Town Manager, Jacob Blaisdell.
Good evening.
Clerk Treasurer, Monty Combs.
Good evening.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Town Attorney, good to see Bob Clutter as well.
Howdy do, everyone.
Agenda has been posted, and we will be following that this evening. First on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please rise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 2 is approval of the Town Council minutes dated August 13, 2018. Those have been distributed. Any changes or questions regarding those? Hearing none, those will pass. Item number 3, approval of the Town Council September 13th minutes, September 13, 2018. Those two have been distributed. Any questions? Hearing none, those two will pass. Item number 4, approval of contract with Electrical Plus, Inc. for lighting at the water treatment plant. Jacob?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So we were looking at doing a project at the water plant to improve the lighting. This is the overhead lighting that exists throughout the entire plant. And just over the years, they've gotten corroded, and a lot of the fixtures don't work. And so we're not just replacing light bulbs. We've got to go in and replace the fixtures. And in doing so, also replacing some wiring. And of course, while we're doing this, we're going to modernize it. Do LED lighting, all that good stuff. We've received 3 bids. They've been reviewed by Wessler. We recommend approval of the low bid, which is $61,000.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve the bid from Electric Plus Incorporated for the work at the water plant.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract with Electric Plus for the contract of $61,000 for the water treatment plant. Are there any questions from the audience? Any from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. Item number 5, approval of the agreement with Samco for underground facilities, locating, and marking service. Jacob?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome.
So we, like all utilities, if somebody calls 811 is doing a project, they need to call 811, and then their underground utilities will be located for them so that they can avoid them in any project that they're doing. Like all utilities, we abide by that, and so we will go out and mark the lines for our water, our drinking water, our wastewater, and our sewer lines, storm sewer lines. And in doing that process, of course, we're dispatching our employees, kind of interrupting what they would otherwise be doing. And while they're out there working, they're also typically working alongside Samco, who's out there searching for the gas lines, fiber, and anything else. And we've looked at the numbers, done the financial analysis, and because Samco's already out there, they can do it, I won't say cheap, but cheaper than what it costs us to dispatch out employees to go and do the separate line locates. So we have a contract in front of you to have them start doing that on the town's behalf. So they would get the request to locate lines, they would go out and do it, and we would pay them a fixed amount per locate that we believe is cheaper than what we can do it. If for some reason it doesn't work out, there is a termination for convenience. The term of this agreement is 1 year, But if something isn't working out, we're not getting the right customer service, it's causing issues, we don't anticipate any, but it does give us the ability to terminate the contract if it's not working out for us. So we would like to go ahead and move forward with this. It's going to be a more efficient use of our employees' time and generate some savings for the community, and we'd ask for your approval.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the agreement with Samco for underground facility locations and marketing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agreement with Samco for the underground facilities locating and marking service. Any questions from the audience? Any from council?
I have one real quick one. Wendell, this is probably a question for you. About how many per month did our crews go out and? Sorry. This is why we need a wireless mic.
What we did is we looked at last year's totals, which was about 2,100 for the year. It varies with the season, the construction season. So the last 2 or 3 weeks, we were looking at, I think it was 87 per week, and that will break down different on the water, since water is town-only, sanitary is with our other districts and stuff. So average, if you take 87 a week and break that down, but like I said, spring and winter, there's different seasons for that. So that's why we estimated a rough cost of what it would cost us per year.
So it's safe to say that's quite a lot for a crew to go out per week to locate 87 in 1 week. That's taken away from other work that they're doing.
Yes, just on those 87 locates per week, it cost us roughly $3,432. With Samco going out and doing the same locates, it's about $1,687.
Is that also outside the Speedway area? Where
It will
sewer-
include that on the sanitary, and these costs will be divided between the wastewater and the water department. The water will have the third of the cost, and we'll have 2/3 on the other departments.
Not so much a question, just an observation. I think it's a good application of what we've talked about for years, about things that we do well, and then the need as we expand services, as we've grown Main Street as an example, and your staff, in particular in Public Works, has to cover for a lot more activity than we used to have. Having those resources now available to do that versus this, and you know, it's a wash at a minimum on if you take those dollars and apply that. That's
Yes.
a good use of.
And just like Jacob said, this gives us hours back to the departments that we go back into our maintenance programs and stuff. And with Bob looking over our agreement, we do have it built in where we have month-to-month review. We're billed once a month on it too, so we can double-check everything. Our staffing will also be kind of double-checking for a while until we get comfortable with this new venture. So, and if you have any concerns or anything, you've got all of our numbers to the department, so please let us know.
Well, one more question.
Yes, sir.
I know we call 811 for this, but is it common for someone to call the town hall to ask for this?
We want you to always call 811 if you're doing digging, repairs in your yard, driveway, whatever. That gets all your all your utilities, the gas, the water, everything identified for needs of marking. And on the town's responsibility, it's main lines that we will be taking care of. Anything the town owns, that's what gets marked out on everything. And our staff will also have communications because they're so used to the service lines on water being marked all the way to the residents. And that's a responsibility that it's kind of been a good neighbor policy, so now we're going to back out to the main lines and mark them correctly. So if a contractor calls in for locates, he has to do his part as a contractor and make sure everything's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. Item number 6, approval of agreement with Fleece and Vanderbrink Engineering, Inc. Jacob.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is an on-call services agreement with the engineering firm Fleece and Vanderbrink. Specifically, they have an expertise in code generation. wastewater plant generates a lot of methane gas that currently we burn off before it goes into the atmosphere. It's a major greenhouse gas, so you burn it, and that helps neutralize it. But some plants have the ability to use it to also generate electricity, which wastewater plants use a ton of. So we're going to, like I said, enter this on-call agreement with them and their expertise. They have somebody on their staff who's already familiar with the wastewater plant, and we'd like to work with them to take a look at this and see if we can generate some significant savings for our wastewater. And we'd ask for your approval.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve the agreement with Fleiss and Vandenbrink Engineering.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agreement with Fleiss and Vanderbrink Engineering. Any questions from the audience? Any from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. Item number 7, ordinance 1308, an ordinance amending Chapter 9.60 of the Speedway Town Code regarding parks, rules, and regulations. Tammy, would you please come forward?
Hello.
Hi.
Just a little brief history. Earlier in the year, I had kind of noticed some things when I was out at the park, just different issues that I had witnessed. Sitting in a shelter, and I'd smell smoke, and there'd people be right next to me smoking, and I would mention to them that we had an ordinance that there was no smoking, but there was no signage up in the shelters for people who weren't familiar with our ordinances. So I started talking to Joe, and we just started looking at the ordinances that had not been updated since 1974. So in looking at the different verbiage, we decided that it might be a good idea to update those to get the wording consistent, to add words in there that reflected more of today's time rather than 44 years ago. So that's what we worked with. Met with the Parks Board on numerous occasions at our Parks Board meetings, went over some of this stuff. And then on May, the Parks Board approved the proposed changes that Joe and I had been working on. And basically, the majority of it is just word consistency. The old ordinance indicated one time it would reference the park board, the next it would reference Board of Recreation of the town. So we tried to make all that consistent to the Parks and Recreation Board. Then we added things in there like skateboarding or other activities that could be damaging. That was added because I had actually witnessed some skateboarders that were jumping the steps at the gazebo, and you could go over there and you can see chips in those steps where they jump it. The steps that are off to the side that don't have that runway towards them, they're perfectly great. No chips in them at all. One of the board members witnessed a skateboarder actually jump the rock there by the gazebo, landed on the rock. So this verbiage was hopefully to help protect our park amenities that we have. We added like the word drone in there. In the old ordinance, we had no motorized model airplanes or cars were permitted in the parks. So we just added drones because a lot of other people, drones have become kind of a modern day motorized hobby, I guess. And then Joe added some more things regarding like the airsoft weaponry, that type of stuff. So, and then the burning, we had instances where people were bringing their own gas grills into the gazebo, and, you know, one day there were 3 grills in there, and that's a fire hazard. So we wanted to make sure we had the ordinances matching, but also signage telling people, hey, you can't have these in there. So if there's any question.
So I guess we need to make a motion before we ask questions.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the amendment to the Town Code Speedway Chapter 9.6, ordinance number 1308.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance 1308. Are there any questions from the audience? Council?
So your signage will have the list of all the things they cannot do in these areas, is that?
Yeah,
your-
the signage is already, the signage is basic, and it really didn't change a whole lot from the previous ordinance, just the basic type of information, no smoking, no grills in there. But we just wanted to officially get the ordinance itself updated. And we also increased the fines. They used to be $20, and we increased those to $50.
And then who's going to be policing that, I guess, or, like, if you're witnessing it, how's
Yeah.
that taken care of?
Well, there's been 2 instances where I've already had to call the police for ordinance violations, and, I called the non-emergency number, and they've been gracious to come out and back me up, and the people have complied. Instances where people are selling stuff in the park without permits. They don't have town permit, they don't have permission from the park, they don't have Board of Health permits, but they're out there selling food. That's been one of the big ones. And then we had an instance with the actual shelters where somebody had rented it, somebody else was in there, and they were refusing to leave, so I had to call the police for that as well. So it's kind of a situation if people see these violations, if they're, worse of violations, call the 311 number, the non-emergency number. Joe said he'd be giving all the police officers cheat sheets. They are aware of it. If they see it, they'll, do something about it. Or if we see it, we call, and if they're not busy, they'll come out and take care of it.
Could I jump in real quickly also?
Yes, please.
One other thing that Joe and Tammy had mentioned to me that it had some frequent complaints about in the past was sound amplification equipment.
Right.
So we included in that it's not permitted if it's plainly audible in excess of 50 feet. So that's, yeah.
Unless approved by the.
And yes, and all of these types of things, and drones, and other more current things that have come on the scene since 1974. So we've worked long and hard on this, probably for the past 6 or 8 months, tweaking it and playing around with it to try and make sure we've covered everything.
So that one in particular, I agree with, but I can tell you every single weekend, if someone wants to call Chief Campbell and his group to come deal with it, they'll have to. Both shelter houses at Leonard Park and probably all 3 locations at Meadowood. So what would you suggest, Tammy,
Well,
to enforce that before someone actually rents, just to kind of get the message across to minimize the issue?
Right. When they're renting the shelters now, we let them know that. And when people call me, I get calls every day about shelter rental, and I have to refer them to town hall to actually rent the shelter. But that's one of the questions I ask them every time now, is are they going to have any kind of sound amplification? And I explain to them what our ordinance is. Hopefully just getting the word out and more people know what the ordinances are, maybe people will start abiding by them better. If we don't enforce them, nobody's going to follow them. So hopefully we can maybe get, a little more enforcing of some of the ordinances. And I have no problem going there, and, I've done it probably half a dozen times now when I'm getting calls from people about situations going on in the park. But if it's something I'm a little worried about, I'll always call for a police officer to back me up, so.
Now, refresh my memory, it's been a couple years since I've been on Parks Board. When you go to rent that shelter house, is there an actual contract that
Yes.
is signed?
And there's rules on the contract
Okay.
that they are signing that they understand and that they will follow.
Okay, so if this ordinance passes tonight, then maybe some of the verbiage from this can be shared on that contract, so there's no
Yeah,
question.
definitely. Actually, what I would like to see happen is giving them a copy of the ordinance. So, and whenever there's anything going on in the parks or where we have vendors there who set up tents, information sessions, I was hoping to do this at the National Night Out, but it got rained out, is actually, that's a great time to get that information out to the community. And that's what I hope to do with the kids' events that we do and the programming, let them know then, kind of just make that part of our program, is tell them some of the rules of the park. And they'll grow up knowing what those rules are, and hopefully when they're parents, and they'll get their kids to mind those rules, and we can hope.
Tammy, let's talk about drones.
Right.
I know this says any type of drone, but there are like all types of different drones. Some are like gigantic, and then my son has one that he gets stuck in the tree every 5 minutes, and I got to go out and get it from the tree. So you're saying if he wants to take his drone over to school, he has to contact the Parks Board and get permission for that, correct?
To have it in the park, yes. And the reason being is, we had the ordinance on there already about motorized airplanes and cars. We just added drones for modern day. But drone in itself, it's mind-boggling, the rules and laws and stuff. I mean, it's crazy. If you read everything, it's a wonder anybody can even fly one in their own yard. Most people, you can get them readily all over the place. But most people don't realize you've got to have them licensed. If they weigh more than a half a pound, which is about 2 sticks of butter, and any of them that would have a camera, unless they're those micro ones, they're going to weigh that. They're supposed to have a license. They have to be 16 to fly them. And there's all these rules, fly zones. And we actually, part of Speedway falls into a restricted fly area. It's on the FAA website, you can go find that out. Meadowood's actually just outside of it, but Leonard's in it, so it just seemed easier just to include that with the model airplanes and cars, motorized cars and airplanes.
So is that a one-day permit, or is it something that could be extended long-term, provided it's that same drone that meets the standard you described?
I guess that would be more of a board. The board would actually have to approve that, so I'm not really sure how they would want to approve that, but I would think if it's one of those micro ones, I don't really see a problem with it, but.
Yeah, and that would be a board decision, so if it was, for instance, a recognized event or, a competition that they wanted to sponsor, I'm sure that they could, make it longer. Typically, the permits are designed to be, sun up to sundown or one-day events, but for larger events or recognized outings, the board would have the discretion to make them for longer, or a recurring one. Every Labor Day weekend, they're going to hold this event, and people can come out and fly their drones or something like that.
My opinion is, I think there should be a better explanation of a drone. Just as you said, I know if you use it for commercial use for your business, you have to be licensed through the FAA. And I think telling a 6 and 7 or a 10-year or 12-year-old kid that he can't fly a drone in a park, that's why we want the parks there for the kids to go to. I think just putting the word drone in, something that I personally kind of disagree with. And I think maybe that should be its own paragraph that should be explained, especially with what you said about a certain weight and a certain size camera and different things like that, so.
And regardless of the weight, there's still rules that apply even to those smaller ones. Technically, they're not supposed to be flown within 25 feet of people, unless they're people within their own group. There was just so many rules with the drones that it just seemed easier just to lump it in with motorized airplanes and cars. It's just kind of a modern day hobby thing, but I definitely understand what you're saying, and I personally don't see a problem with the little micro ones in there. I don't know how the Parks Board would want to, if that even needs to be addressed separately, but it just worries me if we do that, then we're going to have people coming and wanting to make exceptions for the model airplanes or the cars, or, we've got scooters going on now, issues with scooters. There's actually adults that I guess have been riding little motorcycles through the park, and I keep getting calls on that, but by the time I get up here, they're gone. And, that ruins the grass. And
If they're calling you about that, tell them to call the police.
that's what I started telling people.
Yeah.
Call 311.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, okay. Thank you.
Any other comment? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1.
Mr. President, I'd just like to explain my no vote. I just think the drones should have been explained a little bit better. Just why I had the no vote on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And with that, as it did not receive unanimous consent, we'll have to do a second reading at your next meeting, please.
Thank you.
So if we can remember to put that on the agenda.
Bob, can we make any adjustments to it between now and second reading? Or does it need to be passed as read on both readings?
Passed as read on both readings, but I can certainly see if we can look at a second one. It's a material change, so you would, what you could do is at the second meeting, if everybody's in agreement, they could re-adopt it then as amended, but we can,
If I can unpack that, what you're saying is, just for my own understanding, we could make a change to this, but if we approved it unanimously, they would be fine at that point.
correct. So I'll work with you, Tammy, and see if we can come up with a better definition or some exceptions that might satisfy your concerns.
Thank you, Bob. Item number 8, public hearing regarding the appropriation of additional funds. Jacob?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So just to explain this a little bit, this has been advertised as additional appropriations need to be advertised, and the public hearing has been advertised for us to have it tonight. This is an additional appropriation of $1 million, half of it coming from the general fund and half of it coming from the rainy day fund. This appropriation is to set us up to purchase the PNC building at 5300 Crawfordsville Road. I want to stress that this is a real estate transaction, and it's not done until it's done. This is just another step along the process. The purchase and sale agreement hasn't been approved, so there's still steps in the process, but where we're at from a due diligence perspective, things are moving along favorably, and I know that for a number of reasons, a lot of folks have been anxious to see the town purchase this building. I know I and several of you have already received congratulations on purchasing it, which, as I just said, has not actually happened. We're still working on it, but would be a great way to consolidate town offices, maybe exit out of the lease that we have right now for space, would generate a lot of room for other community activities, community space for different groups and organizations in town, just a whole host of opportunities, plus opportunities to be smarter with our money and invest it in assets that are going to last us for a long time and serve the needs of the community for decades to come. So now that I've explained it and that's been advertised, feel free to open it up to a public hearing.
Okay. So at this time, it is 7:27. I will open it up for public hearing. If you wish to come forward and speak, please give us your name and address.
Tammy Smith, 1627 Beeler Avenue. I'm actually representing the Parks Department. I was excited about hearing about the opportunity, if this goes through, having community space in there might open up opportunities for me to be able to offer more programming through the Parks Department. So I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. Anyone else?
That's a question of our attorney. Should we have a motion before we
To close to the public hearing typically.
close the public hearing, and we don't have a motion before the hearing? Okay, just double checking. Thank you. Pretty big issue. Make sure we handle properly.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
So you're saying we
Yes.
should close the hearing?
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah, normally the procedure would be after the public hearing is closed. That is when you make your motion. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else to come before the council? We will close the public hearing at 7:29.
I'll make a motion. We approve Resolution 2018-10 regarding the appropriation of funds as described by our town manager.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2018-10. Any additional comments from the audience? Any from council?
Just we'll add to this, maybe a couple of questions after that, but add to our town manager's comments. I think that this will make us much more efficient in how we operate between departments, realizing we can bring folks together. And I think those are some of the other things that we've discussed. Jacob, this is not done by any means, and I just appreciate the work by many to investigate the options and the opportunity. And I guess a question I had is, there's a movement of rainy day funds and monies from the general fund. So would we have a balance of the rainy day fund today?
$1.5 million?
1.5 million, okay. And I think that was the one question that I had. So, thank you.
I'd just like to also add, agree with what Gary said, but as well, that our buildings that our current staff is in are in some bad conditions. We'll end up spending this money either to fix them up, expanding them, whatever it might do. So one way or the other, that money is going to have to be used to make our facilities better than what we currently have. I know town clerks are, busting at the seam, police department, so we're all sitting on top of each other and not being efficient, so.
I'd just like to add that I think it's important to note that we're not borrowing money for this. That says a lot for Monty and his office and how we know where we have the funds to be able to do this, to not borrow money, and we're able to do that without borrowing. I think that's a big step in this. So that's all I have.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0.
Mr. President, just one thing if I may make here, by approving this goes to the Department of Local Government Finance, and they give the final approval. I'm sure it will be, but it does go that route.
Thank you, Monty. Bob?
One other kind of step in the process that I just asked Jacob about, due to the timing of that, we haven't set a closing date yet. As Jacob mentioned, we haven't even completely refined the purchase agreement. In the process, though, there may be some routine due diligence contracts or documents that come up, and I think it might be a good idea to ask you all for a motion authorizing either the president or vice president to sign any due diligence documents or agreements that come up in advance of the closing.
A question on that, would you suggest adding any expense to that, or do our...
You certainly can. I don't anticipate most of them are without cost or, very minimal. But if you want to set a cap or a ceiling on that, that would certainly be appropriate.
So I'll make a motion that we give authorization to our town manager with oversight from and possibly our council president, vice president, to move forward with a purchase agreement and any other documents necessary to move this project forward. As you can use notes from our attorney's comments to add to that, that makes it more clean or cleaner.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the authorization of signature from selected members of town council and town manager. Any comments from the audience? Any others from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? It's 5-0. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Item number 10, approval of claims and utility adjustments by our clerk treasurer, Monty Combs.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've submitted to you and your colleagues as counselors the claims for the period of September the 8th through September 21st, and would appreciate your approval.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the claims from September 8th to September 21st.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the claims as presented by Clerk Treasurer Monty Combs. Any questions from our audience? Any from council?
I have one, Mr. President. Monty, the simple view, I don't know what page it's on. Says mobile app licensing. You know what that is for?
It's not exactly. I think Jacob probably knows that better than I do.
Jacob,
That's for the town app that we have.
is that a yearly fee or?
It's an annual fee, yes.
Okay. Is that the agreed amount that we had when we started that? It seems kind of high.
I believe that's part of our agreement. I mean, we have to up it every year. It does seem a little bit high, but that includes the interface that we have with it so that we can update it, so that we're not paying like an app developer to go in and do the coding or anything. So that's kind of what you're really paying for, is the ability to make adjustments, updates, change it around, push notifications out, all that good stuff on our own without having to, have a professional IT on staff.
Because that seems, I mean, I think we're going to hear about that shortly, but it seems like it's kind of high.
Yeah, I had some questions about it too when I first saw it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's,
Maybe that's-
you're right to ask questions, but when you look at what the service provides us, it's a lot cheaper than having somebody on staff that professionally is doing programming, that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 5-0. Monty?
Yeah, our utility adjustments for the same period of time, from the 8th of September to the 21st, which we've submitted to you, a total of $811.49. Some of this had to do with our lockbox company. They had some that were posted incorrectly, and we had to make those adjustments, and some people's that got credit for paying when they didn't, and others who should have gotten credit did not, and we had to make a few adjustments there, but again, would appreciate your approval.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve the utility adjustments as presented by our clerk treasurer.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the utility adjustments as presented. Any questions from the audience? Any from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. Monty, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you, Monty. Thanks for your report, and good to see you back.
Thank you.
Item number 11, report from our department supervisors. Tim Gropp, Economic Development.
Good evening, council. Just a few updates for you. A couple timeline items on the Wilshaw project. So things are moving on the apartment side very well. They obviously weather dependent at this point, so days like this hurt this time schedule a little bit, but they're anticipating masonry on the north building being completed by October 5th, masonry on the south building completed by November 5th. They are going to start moving in appliances in the next week or so, and they're also supposed to be starting on siding in the next week or so. Again, it's all going to depend on how much rain we get this week. So things are moving along really well there. I did inquire about the parking lot. I was a little concerned about the timing with plants shutting down in November. They plan on starting the parking lot October 1st, targeting completion at the end of October as well. So that'll be in place, probably with just a binder coat, but I was a little worried they'd wait till the springtime, and then we'd be at the mercy of weather at that point. So I was glad to hear they're going to get the concrete work and at least the binder coat down before the plants close this year. So the other thing we're checking on as well, it was a point of emphasis during our negotiations, were cameras. So before they start running on the conduit and everything, we want to make sure there's ample security around the Wilshaw project as well. So we're checking into where those will be placed, and if we can't add some additional wire, it's always cheaper to throw the wire in the conduits up front versus going back and trying to do it later. So we're trying to work with them to make sure that we could possibly add cameras in the future as well, just to make sure there's good security in that area as we're developing. Beyond that, on the hotel side, we had sent a letter to them requesting documents They had about 30 days to respond, and we're towards the end of that, so we're going to follow up on that, see where we're at. We did receive construction plans. We were supposed to have a construction pre-con meeting last week. It got pushed back, but we did receive plans that are about 70% complete. We're trying to get that rescheduled for the next 2 weeks here. We'd like to get it done early October, so we've reached out to them to get a date for that. Beyond that, we continue to wait on final word that financing has gone through, so we can continue on the bond process for the hotels. So that's about all on the Wilshaw at this point. Any questions on that?
Jim, you mentioned the parking lot. I
Yes.
don't know if you know, but parking is sometimes an issue on Main Street.
Yes.
The parking lot that will be paved, when will the public have?
It won't be open until next year when they start leasing in probably April, but I wanted to make sure that it could be ready at that point, so I was
So it's
worried
important to
about
get that first coat down.
It's important to get the concrete work done and that first coat down to make sure that the plants typically close in mid-November. Thanksgiving's a good rule of thumb, just weather dependent, so I wanted to make sure they had a base down for that. But I'd assume that the hotel, once construction started, will probably use some of that for parking and holding of equipment for a while, as long as they're allowed to. But once leasing starts, and hopefully sometime in April, that lot will have to be open fully for, as intended, public parking.
Thank you.
Beyond that, we did, earlier tonight, the redevelopment commission had a meeting, had a few action items. One was there was a small extension granted to the Gilman Street parcel for closing. Tomorrow was technically the last day of due diligence. We pushed that back till October 8th. Mostly because we had a few items to clarify with the title company and the survey company, and so we're waiting to hear back from them. So we still anticipate that project, or that parcel closing no later than mid-October. Everything's, as soon as we hear back, we don't anticipate any issues. We just need answers from those two firms, and once we hear back, we should be okay to move forward. We just want to give ourselves a little breathing room there as well. And then also, we approved the demolition of 1340 and 1346 Main, which is a storage building in the Art Center. We have been in communication with the Art Center for quite some time this year. They're aware this is coming and have had ample notice that this was coming. That being said, the demo will take place in early November. At that time, once the demo is complete, there will be another group that comes on and does some environmental cleanup. Later in November, they'll actually be removing some of the dirt in that area and taking it off-site. So we're excited to see that project keep inching its way forward, doing some redevelopment 1300 block. The RFP is out right now and has been noticed, so we're taking the steps needed to do redevelopment 1300 block and checking the boxes as we go along. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Next up, Police Chief Jim Campbell.
Good evening. I'll start my report with the Brickyard 400, probably the Reader's Digest version and the summary of a good after-action report, rain. We had 3 days. The only thing I'd like to say, obviously, the agencies were there, police, fire, medical, but it was a long 3 days. That's the first rain out that the Brickyard folks had had in 25 years. I don't think they felt any better about that, but again, it's just one of those events, and, people were great, their patience, and, working with, trying to get it done. And that's pretty much it. The air race, October 6th, 7th, that's kind of the last major event for us for this year, but the crowd size is probably going to be similar to what it was last year. I think the entertainment level, a lot of that is, you've got international pilots from all over the world, from Japan to Germany to, I think the real interest level there is a lot to do with them filming that and, going to places all over the world. But we'll have a similar setup for incident command, and again, it'll be 2 days of, being at the IMS. We do have a graduation, the two officers, Eisman and Ludwig, Friday the 28th. they get back from my LEA, I'm sure they're going to be ready to come home, but we're going to be glad to get them back because that gives us 2 more guys that, really have been gone for the last few months. I do want to, Tri-Kappa, Speedway Tri-Kappa came in on 9/11 and brought, all kinds of treats and food, and, I just want to recognize them, and, the Girl Scouts came and brought boxes of candy, cookies, that all seem to have disappeared somewhere, but, it's too, has he still got one?
We got our share.
Hey, I just want it, that's in the record, We shared. But, it's just another example that, people like Tri-Kappa take the time to come in on a day like 9/11, and, we do appreciate that. So, that's it.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Next up, Fire Chief Bob Fishburne.
Thank you. I don't want to reiterate, the events that Jim mentioned are similar to the ones that we've had and prepared for. We felt like it was like Groundhog Day up in the pagoda, because it was the same for 3 or 4 days in a row. And someone asked,
With Bob, I want that on the record.
I thought it was a blessing to spend those days with Jim, but evidently he didn't feel the same way. I want Monty to come up and spend some time up there at some point. He'd be up there for about an hour and he'd kill us all. No, but I did want to thank the kids, the Tri-Kappa. We had kids from the schools that sent us letters thanking us for what we do, remembering 9/11 and all of those things, and it was pretty neat. I know in the executive session you guys got a copy, but I did want to let the public know that since we were at the track for the first of the month meeting, I didn't have a chance to announce it, but it's something we've been working on since October of 2017, and the town, the fire department was awarded an AFG grant that totaled $218,716. That money will be designated for portable handheld radios, which will allow us to contribute to what the county is doing countywide, but we'll actually own those radios. Few things have come up. We're gonna utilize some of those with our Department of Public Works so that during events we can actually have a few spares now with this money to buy, and we're actually buying them through Public Safety Communications so that we get the doubled up years on the maintenance. If we would buy them directly from Motorola as an entity, we would just get a 5-year maintenance contract with them. But because we'll buy them through Public Safety Communication, we'll get a 10-year maintenance. So we won't have any expense on maintaining those radios and the problems that we have. If an antenna breaks or a button snaps off or whatever, we just take it down to Public Safety like we do now. And then the other part of that grant was for the exhaust removal or air scrubbing systems for our bays. A lot of people don't realize, obviously, we start our trucks up in the bay. They're all diesel fuel. We have some that are adequate for what we're supposed to have, but as a part of trying to help with the cancer initiative, it was something that we thought was very advantageous to try to go after and favorable with AFG grants. They've awarded some of those, and so both of our stations will be being equipped with that. I know Monty helped a lot with giving us the proper accounts, numbers, all of those sorts of things. I talked to him about the matching fund. I also talked with Jacob about it. We have 5% matching fund, which is $10,900. And we got this notification after the budget was presented. We're looking at, do we do that next year, or do we try to grab something out of this year? But I'll work with the two of them on that and keep you posted. This was a group effort. I'm not going to stand here and take credit for it. It's a process we actually started before Assistant Chief Lynch left, and he left literally a month after we had gotten involved. So in the interim, Battalion Chief Brian Wyatt was our point of contact. Brian and I did a bunch of work getting them stats, getting them all the things our grant writers needed to make, the narrative and the presentation. And then once Assistant Chief Milhorn came on board, he became the point of contact and worked with Brian. And of course, I helped him, but, I'm not always going to be here. And so for these guys that are working their way up through the ranks to learn how to, navigate some of this, I think it's good for more than one person to be the person that is being contacted. We learned a lot, and there are a lot of other monies out there. So I had those guys who are going to be here learn what they're looking for in the grants. I had 2 other Marion County chiefs who actually are a part of those boards pre-read our narratives. They were very helpful, and then the grant company helped us tweak it. So part of their fee was covered because we were awarded. So it just, saves the town a lot of money for equipment that we need, and I wanted to let the public know, but I wanted you guys to know ahead of me coming up here and announcing it. Other than that, we were lucky enough to get in on some training. Avon had a house that was being tore down. We get invited by a lot of Marion County, but because of our relationship building with, doing things with Avon and Brownsburg and Plainfield and places like that, Avon actually contacted us, and we were able to send all 3 of our shifts out there to do live fire training in a building that, they were able to have really, realistic scenarios, and that's always, great to do. And then, the building or the house was demolished there on Rockville Road, so we're able to participate in that. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm good.
Chief, I have one question.
Yeah.
The grant, the radios, are you going to purchase additional on top of what you're already going to get, or is that going to help?
No, so if you remember at some of those hearings, they would put up these graphics that City of Lawrence or Decatur Township had put money in that was going to save the county money. Well, most of those were grants. Those were grant amounts. Beech Grove Police Department had $40,000 grant. So we'll still get our full allotment, but we'll actually own the radios. Okay, so it's semantics. Yes, when we wrote this grant, we didn't know how all of that was going to work out. So it actually saves all the taxpayers of Marion County because of this grant, and it allows Speedway to contribute to that overall cost that was already approved through the public safety and through the town board. But we'll actually own the radios that we purchase. And so if we are able to purchase a few more of the expensive, the radios that you utilize for events, we can do maybe 6 of those, designate a couple for Department of Public Works, and if we come up 3 short from this money and all of our mobiles, so all the radios in our trucks weren't covered in this grant, that'll all still be taken care of through the taxpayers.
And by owning those, the warranty will still be done, work will still be done downtown?
Oh, yeah.
Cost is covered by that?
Yep, yep. So what Public Safety Communications has the mechanism to do is we will buy the radios from PSC. They've already done the same thing with Decatur, with Wayne Township, with City of Lawrence. So we'll purchase the radios from PSC, they'll invoice us, we'll utilize that for the grant. Therefore, their agreement with Motorola rolls to us. So
Okay.
it's identical, it's just we own them at the end of life. So it's a great question.
Thank you.
All right.
And Chief, just one more. So what's the timing, the rough timing on transition?
We have a year. We have until October of 2019, and it flows right in with what we were going to do anyway in the purchase of the radios. So
Okay. And the radios we have today, will they have any value? Or they be sold to someone else? Or?
the radios we have today, we don't own.
Okay.
They'll go back to PSC.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Chief. Next up, Public Works Director Wendell Walters.
Good evening, council. Some updates for you on all the utility departments. Couple things that we've got accomplished. The community crossing grant was submitted this month. We're applying for $193,735. That's 50% of our 2018 projects. We should be notified to the positive in November on that. And then on the B&O Trail, we had our grand opening on Saturday with the combination of the Diamond in the Rough program, so it went pretty good. We still have a little work to do. We've got to go through and do our punch list and get those items taken care of, but overall, we're 99% open and operating. The hawk signal's all been tested and justified, so got a little nervous there for a while of getting it completed, but contractor and inspector stepped up and we got it done, so another good project. The fine screen, or I'm going to jump into the water department here. We have our staffing that's getting, going through their certification and schooling with our new superintendent. He was an educator, writing of the test, so he is working with our staff to get their certifications. So hopefully next couple of months we'll start seeing some results. They got brand new books to study off of, so hopefully we make use of those. And just still on the water department, we've got our camera system installed at the plant. We are working to get security gates put in. These are things that's been identified over the years that has a need to get done down there. So everything is on works there. We are doing a review on all of our well system. We're working with Westler Engineering and our staff to look at our well systems. We have one that's 1935, so we're investigating. These are tested every year, so we're seeing some numbers that are coming in a little bit low. So we're going to take a review of everything and make sure that if there's a need that we get it taken care of rather quickly. And just an important note, you should have got an email or an alert today. The water department will be doing their annual hydrant flushing. This will take effect between the time of October 8th to the 20th, and they will be working in the evening from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. This is the flushing of the system. They will start at the south end of town and work their way all the way through the town district on flushing those hydrants. And this is to remove sediment, move the water, clean things up. And on your notice, you'll see from Mike that if you see some discoloration in your water in the mornings, just flush it for a couple minutes and it'll clear up. So they'll be out working. They are identified. They have their trucks and badges and everything. So have any questions, just get with one of the people on the street. Okay, moving over to our wastewater department. Since I've been in this position, I get a lot of different education on the departments. So Norm invited me to Newcastle to look at a fine screen system. So we did. We went out and looked at it. It's conveyors and belts and moves some of the heavy particles out of the waste system. So we were talking with the engineers and the superintendent of that division at Newcastle. So we are now working on to get a quote put together, have Bob review it as soon as we get it together, get it out on the street. Next couple of months, bring it back to council for your approval review. So that'll be happening there. Also on Norm's side, they have a boiler system down there that helps treat the digesters. It's got some age on it, so they've been doing some maintenance and identified they're going to have to do some additional work on it. So they're getting pricing on that equipment to see what it's going to cost to do it, but they're thinking mostly they can do it in-house repairs with equipment coming into them. And just on a industrial pre-treatment note is Norm working with Mel Brothers. They put a ammonia monitor on what they bring into the system to try and make sure that their levels are meeting our criteria. So that's in testing, and they constantly have conversations and meetings to make sure that's going correctly. Then on the street department side, all their regular maintenance, supporting events and everything is ongoing. They will start their general fall cleanup, running sweepers, picking up and everything. And we're still doing our sewer cleaning throughout the Old Town District. We hopefully would be done this month. We had an incident Friday that we buried our root cutter head in the sewer line. So we tried some old tricks and different things to try and get it to release. It didn't, so we're going to try a couple other things before we dig the street up. But hopefully, we don't have to do that, but we'll make notification if we do to retrieve that cutter piece of equipment. So that's at 11th and Green Lawn. Neighbors are aware of what's going on because we've been down there for the last couple of days investigating and trying to get this tool to release. So I think that kind of catches us up for now, if you've got any questions.
I've asked this before, Wendell. Crawfordsville and High School, the striping.
Yes, I think I sent a note out. That is on a contract with Calumet for 10/29.
Okay.
So I asked that contractor to verify that last week at our B&O meeting, and I haven't heard back from them yet. So
Okay.
we were still following up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendell. Next up, Parks and Recreation, Tammy Smith.
Hello again.
Hello.
We have a couple of open registrations on the Parks page of the website. The first one is the Speedway Junior Basketball League for boys and girls grades 3 through 6. That registration is going on now for the Winter League, as well as we're going to attempt a fall break camp this year. So that is also online if any students grades 1 through 12 aren't going anywhere for fall break. Maybe they'd like to come to the park and have fun. We're going to just do games and crafts and just have a lot of fun for a couple of hours. So that'll be Monday through Friday. On Friday, we'll do a picnic from 11:30 to 12:30. There'll be 2 sessions that they can choose from, either session 1 from 9:30 to 11:30 or session 2, 12:30 to 2:30. And then on Friday, both sessions will come together for a picnic, which McGilvery's is going to be providing hot dogs for. So I'm excited about that. And then tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, I will be attending the Parks and the National Recreation on Parks Association's conference is being held downtown this year. So I'm real excited about that, and I'm excited about the opportunity to have some people from all over the country in the parks profession be able to come and possibly visit some of our parks. So I'll be attending that. And then what I'm most excited about, this Friday, we are finally going to be getting the trees in the ground. We've got 43 trees that are ordered. They're going to be delivered Wednesday morning. Mike and Rob from the street department are going to start digging holes Wednesday and Thursday. We'll stage the trees at the holes. They'll be putting barrels in them for safety reasons. And then Friday, we've got volunteers. The Speedway Home Helpers has gotten corporate volunteers that are going to be helping us get those actually into the ground. 10 trees in Leonard and 33 in Meadowood. So if any other citizens are interested in volunteering with us, we'd love to have you come out to the parks. I believe 8 a.m., is that right, Michelle? Yeah, 8 a.m. is when they're meeting at Town Hall, correct? So if anyone would like to join us. That's all I have.
Great.
Any questions?
Thanks, Tammy.
Okay, thanks.
Next up, communications update, Michelle Lottie.
Thank you. Good evening. As social media has become more and more important, I just wanted to give you guys an update on some interesting data and kind of let you know where we're at and what the kind of future looks like for us. The first slide did a comparison to January of this year compared to September. So the biggest group of followers is through our Facebook page with almost 4,000 followers. The highest increase from the beginning of the year would be the town app with a 28% increase. We have about a little over 1,600 followers on Twitter, and our email notifications is pretty much flat. So that's some information for you to review. And then I kind of broke it down by each media type. Looking at Facebook, one of the most popular posts that we had was our back to school post. It reached a little over 4,500 folks. It was shared 47 times, and I imagine that was by very eager and excited parents. One of the most fun, I think, interesting things that we do is the Facebook Live. It's one of my favorites. It instantly reaches folks all over the world that are interested in what's happening in the town of Speedway. And we had a great response with the Speedway War Memorial groundbreaking ceremony. You'll see that 4,700 people saw that, and it was shared 3,100 times. And we did the B&O ribbon cutting ceremony, and within an hour of that being Facebook Lived, if that's a verb, there were 600 people that had seen it within that hour. So before people had even come back, there were 600 people that had seen that. So that's kind of neat that you can reach that many people that quick. And another popular post, it just shows you some of the different data that we can get off of the Facebook. The most popular post that we've had recently was over 10,000, was for this poor little sad lost puppy. And you can even get negative feedback. That's people that respond with like a sad face. And it was shared 152 times. But the happy ending that this little guy was adopted and he's in his forever home now. So happy ending. You can also get some demographic data from Facebook, which I think is really interesting. 67% of our followers are female, and 19% of them are ages 35 to 44. And we have fans from 17 different countries. And you'd think that they would all be from Speedway, but that's not necessarily the case. We have 1,724 followers that have Indianapolis listed as their home on their profiles. 869 of them are from Speedway, and 311 are from Hendricks County. So everybody's kind of interested in what we have going on, and I think that's kind of some interesting data. And then I looked at the town app, which is approaching 2 years old, and we use it for a number of different things. Recently, we put out a push notification that the Lions Club was going to do a new event hosting fireworks, Labor Day fireworks, and that one was viewed 1,800 times, and it was shared. People can share it with their friends. It was shared 8 times, and they saved it to their calendars by 7 people. And that was actually opened by 72 people. So 1,800 people received the notification, they saw the heading, maybe it was something they weren't interested in, but then 72 of those folks actually opened it. So we have 1,900 total followers right now that have downloaded the town app, which I think is pretty good. Since the beginning of the year, in January, we've had 25,000 sessions that people have gone to the app for some reason, whether they've gone to look at current events or open a notification or get some sort of information about the town. We've had 605 downloads since January 1st, and the average time spent in our app is 10 minutes and 10 seconds, and that is huge. If you, I have quarterly reviews with our app host company, and they are blown away with the amount of app response that we get, the amount of people that are using it, and the amount of time that people are spending in the app. They said that's unheard of here for a municipal app, so they're really excited about that.
Michelle, could they give any reason or other examples of other communities that have anywhere near that or similar to that?
They said the average time spent in an app is about 1.5 minutes.
Okay. And why do they think ours is up? What are people doing at that point?
They're not real sure. Maybe it's because I leave mine on all the time. I don't know, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. They're thinking people are just navigating it around, and maybe it's still kind of new, and people are kind of looking around to see what's all in there. But they're impressed with the length of time that people are staying in there. And also there is, everybody has their phones. Everybody has their phone within an arm's length. And so you can pay your water bill. There's a link to pay your water bill right in the phone app. There's a link to my most asked question, is solid waste calendar. That's right in the app. You can get all that information in there as well. A new feature that we just started last month, sort of kind of played around with there's a new feature that's available. It's a digital passport, and we launched it with the Big Machine Vodka Bar Crawl. So it allows folks to go into each location, you check in, and you check in at so many places and you earn like a badge. And then if you check in all locations, then you're entered to win a prize whatever it is. So we had 100 people down, and think about the crummy weather, again, that we had, Brickyard Weekend. We had 100 people that weekend download the app. And so they now are getting our information and seeing what's happening in Speedway. So that's kind of cool. So let's see, with 40 people actually used the app that night. There were 20 check-ins, and 7 people checked in at all 8 locations, so we awarded a prize. Unfortunately, the prize were race tickets and tickets to Florida Georgia Line, so that maybe wasn't a great prize after all, but we tried. We tried. So there's some possibilities, some future digital passports. We could do something like a parks tour where people could have to visit each park and check in at each one and learn something about each park there, and we could do a prize. We're looking at doing this again for Shop Small Saturday. We could check in at different locations around town while they're doing their shopping and enter to win a gift card or something like that. So there's a lot of different uses that we can engage our users with that. And then something in the future that I'm really looking at, which I think would be really interesting, is a walking tour. It is part of our downloadable app. You can go to any location, have a little recorded walking tour that you can start from your spot, and it'll guide you through town. I think it would be interesting to do like an old Speedway walking tour, talk about the architectural, the history, maybe a tour like where drivers used to stay back in the day, and just kind of give visitors a little more history about our town, because it's pretty unique, and I think it's a good story to share. El Paso, Texas, if you have some time, El Paso has a really good digital walking tour component of their app. It's really interesting. And then Twitter. There wasn't a lot of data that I could find with Twitter. We have 1,644 followers. Just for the month of August, we had 11,200 impressions. The top tweet was from February 7th, 2018. That's when we got the milk bottle presented to our fine town manager, Jacob, by Doug Bowles. And I learned that if you tag Doug Bowles in any tweet, you're automatically going to get about 12,000 people to follow that, just
I
because.
think that was all me, actually, in that particular
Was that you?
one. I think
Oh.
yeah, I drove that traffic. So.
Okay, clearly, yeah. So that continues to grow as well. And then to the website, one of the things that I've tried to improve with the website, there's been a lot of edits that I still find some errors every once in a while. There's just so much in there. But one of the things I've tried to improve is the overall front face that you look at. There are engaging, inviting photos on the front, not necessarily flyers or words. They're like engaging, like I want to go there. I want to find more about that event, because I'm actually using photos to get more information on that scroll. And I'd like to, in the future, if we're able to update the website, streamline a lot of data. I think websites are used differently now than maybe they were even 5 years ago. I think they're more of a historical place marker and a place for people to go and find permit information or minutes or agendas. So I think that our website could be reworked a little bit to make that information a little more streamlined. And then I looked at, when we send out the email blasts, people sign up for emails through the website. I looked at that, and I thought that was a little interesting. There are 1,524 people that have signed up for those email alerts. We have very few bounce backs, so that's good. So of those, 1,522 are actually receiving them, but they're only being opened by 692 people. And then the link that takes them to the document is only being viewed by 149 people. So less than 10% of those folks are actually getting the information.
So what are you sending out on a blast, for instance, like?
Anything that we would put on Facebook or Twitter, if it's road closures or like the hydrant flushing.
I think a lot of times the message is in the headline, like
Very-
we're flushing hydrants, and so people say,
Very
oh,
topic dependent.
okay,
Right.
that's good. And they may not even, they might just see the subject
Right.
and then delete the email, and versus go in and open it and then click the link. We'd like to figure out a way to put more information in the actual email, so you don't have to click the link, but just the way it kind of works on the website, it's a lot more streamlined if we do it this way, but that's kind of an improvement we'd like to make in the future.
Yeah. And then the last page just talks a little bit about more the benefits of social media. Again, everybody has a phone in their hand, and it alerts all the users of emergency or important information. It's a whole placeholder for public events and activities. It's also great for town council events, including state of the town and any information that you guys may want to share, any meetings that you're going to be at. Promotes local group activities like things at the high school, music or fundraising opportunities. It's also great for construction updates and road closures. And the thing I like about Facebook, it allows the interaction. Folks can respond, they can send me a message, ask a question about something, and we're able to respond pretty much right then. It also allows us to celebrate our successes like ribbon cuttings and grand openings, and then the live stream lets folks from all over see what's happening. Sorry, Tim Gropp told me I had 2 minutes, so I had to hurry.
Well put together.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you
looks
very
great,
much.
Michelle.
I heard you guys love PowerPoint, so I was very excited.
Well, Counselor Delisle made a very good point earlier, but he's too bashful to say this, that there was a comment here, I think on the fourth or fifth page, regarding the comment about Subway, about 35 people came in, mentioned the app. So 35, I think that should constitute like free cold cut combos or something, right? I mean, that's 35 people, that's pretty solid.
To the audience.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
to the office. Oh, that's great.
Any questions?
No, nice report, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up, report from our town manager, Jacob Blaisdell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Welcome.
I will comment on, thank you, Michelle, for doing this. This isn't something that I ask her to do every meeting, but it's something that we're using more and more to reach folks and want people to be aware of how we're using it. I think we're still tweaking a little bit what message goes on what platform, which is something that everybody's trying to figure out because it's something that's always evolving. There are some platforms that we're not on, like we don't have an Instagram account, but where it's at right now, it feels like we've got plenty of avenues. But like I said, this is something we're going to keep using as we try to communicate more, get information out, get it out faster, be more transparent with what's going on. So it's just something that we're going to keep using. And hopefully, if you're watching and you're not following us on Facebook or Twitter or anything, please like us, and you'll start getting that information. So a few updates from me. Couple of quick announcements. We are happy to say that we've received a couple of planning grants. One is from the Office of Community and Rural Affairs for Economic Development Planning. I think we had to have a public hearing for this. We've gone through the process of advertising like you do for any grant application. We're excited to have that, as we've discussed at the time. It's been several years since an economic development plan was done for the town, and it was done many years ago when it focused quite a bit more on the east side of town, and which I think was the right approach. I'll compliment my predecessors and all of you that were involved in that. But now we're at a point where we need to take a fresh look at the town and where we're at, and look at the town holistically, and make sure we're incorporating all the elements. So we're excited to kick that off. We also received a planning grant, actually I should call it a corridor study grant, from the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, to study Crawfordsville Road, and particularly the west side. There's some dangerous intersections. There's a lot of traffic. Traffic counts keep going up, and so this will allow us to do a study, look at traffic data, look at accident data, and start planning for what we could potentially do with that area in the future to improve transportation. Also want to thank, Wendell mentioned it, but we had a nice turnout for the 5K and the ribbon cutting for B&O Trail. Really nice day, unlike today, and beautiful weather and a great time. And hopefully we can do some more trail ribbon cuttings here soon, right, Wendell? So that was exciting. And then last but not least, I'll mention, we've talked a little bit about sump pump program and helping get folks disconnected from putting it into our sanitary sewer system, which can create problems and backups and additional costs on the system. We're kind of in a beta trial testing. I'm going to be a guinea pig this week. We're testing out the interface. We've got it set up so that that users can go on your own and just click and sign up for a time that will show availability. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for folks to go out and do that. So we're testing, but look out for some announcements on that. We'll send the link out, hopefully start getting folks signed up. And if you have a basement and a sump pump, we'd like to check it out and make sure it's hooked up properly. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jacob.
Jacob, that's only in the Meadowwood area, is that correct?
It'll be all throughout town and actually outside of town. Anything that's in our sanitary sewer district, we will be looking to make sure it's hooked up properly, which is to say not hooked up to our system at all and goes outside of the house.
Anything else? All right, thank you. Next up, Town Attorney Bob Clutter.
I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Bob.
And to expedite things for you.
Thank you. All right, reports from our council members. Eileen Fisher.
I have nothing this evening.
Thank you. Councilor Jason Delisle.
Nothing for me.
Councilor Gary Rakes.
A couple things. The Diamond in the Rough, I want to thank, more than anyone, Beverly Dotledge Catter-Henry. She's just been a driving force for our trails, and it was great to see maybe 75 to 100 people that came to Meadowwood Park. A lot of runners, walkers, bikers, fans show up for that event a week ago Saturday, and it was just nice to be a part of that. I think Councilor Lindsay was there, and our Town Manager Jacob was there, and several other folks, and it was just it's great to see that trail done, and a lot of hard work by a lot of people. This council, previous councils, redevelopment commissions, our employees in our town to just make it happen. And I probably, I'm not exaggerating, I probably have 15 different messages, emails, et cetera, from folks that don't live in our town that have said, thanks for the work you're doing on the trails, because I'm now coming to Speedway to run or to ride my bike or whatever. And that's exactly one of the things that we wanted to try and do with trails, was to attract people. And we'll get more investment from them. So that's great. Second thing, real quick, last Monday, the Association of Indiana Counties had actually last week, they had a meeting in downtown Indy. They called and asked if they could coordinate a dinner on Monday, on that Monday night a week ago on Main Street. There were 490 people that had dinner coupons, and they went to 5 of our restaurant/retail centers, actually 6 on Main Street. They also had the 2-seater out. They had go-karts going at SIK, so it was a very successful event, incredibly successful Monday night for those businesses, and it'll be nice to see if we can't find a way to get other conventions, conferences that come to downtown Indy that are contained just to one hotel, not necessarily trying to take business from convention center downtown, but trying to get maybe one night, one afternoon, that kind of thing on our Main Street. So it was from all reports, they were very satisfied, and a lot of folks saying they'll come back. So with that, that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Vice President Dave Lindsay.
Nothing to report this evening.
All right. Only thing I have is we've got several openings for some boards and commissions. Would love to see some new faces come out. And so if you could just take a look, we've got some postings, I believe, on our website, right, Michelle? If you could go on to the website and juice those numbers up a little bit on our likes. But yeah, we'd love to have more people involved, so take a look. If there's something that's of interest, please reach out to us. We'd like to have you. So on that note, thanks for joining us this evening. It is 8:23. I call this meeting adjourned.